Hello my friends, my name is Dasha. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about some anticipated releases for 2021. Let me preface this, great start. Let me preface this by saying I am bad at keeping up with new releases, even for like series I've read and loved, so this is not a comprehensive list of everything I'm going to want to read in 2021. And on top of that, a lot of releases are not really scheduled yet or announced for like the later half of the year, so again, not comprehensive. But I do want to talk about books that are coming out because I feel like that's a really important side of BookTube. I love that we talk about books that we're even just excited for, that we haven't read yet. It always puts them out into the universe. Everyone can, get excited for them too if it sounds like something they're interested in. So this list is some books I've spotted on NetGalley or on other people's videos that I've watched throughout the year. And while they're not all books that I'm like super highly anticipating and I'm dying to read, they're books that sound interesting and they're books that I want to share with you guys. So we've got a little bit of YA, a little bit of adult, we've got some fantasy mainly, but there's a little bit of nonfiction as well. So let's get into these. I'm going to go in order of publication date. So the first book I want to talk about is Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is getting released on January 5th. This is about a world where the gods of Olympus, a lot of them have died off, but the main ones are to be punished, so they get sent down to Earth in mortal form once every 7 years. And during this time, hunters from some of the big old families are allowed to come and kill these gods and take over their powers. So not a lot of the original gods are left alive. There are a lot of new gods from these families, and it follows one girl who's part of one of these families, but they have all been killed. I'm doing a really bad job of explaining this. The concept for this one is a little hard to explain. All you need to know is there's a very deadly game involved. There is a revenge plot. I read an excerpt of the first few chapters on NetGalley, and I am like pretty pumped for this one. I love the Greek aspect. I feel as though it is like a grown-up Percy Jackson vibe because you have like a grown-up, pretty tough character and you have these like games involving the Greek gods that interact with you, and it's kind of grittier from what I got from this, like the excerpt that I read. So I'm pretty interested in this one, and I will link where I talked about the excerpt that I read right up here so you can hear me talk about it a bit more coherently, but this one is pretty interesting, it seems, so I'm pretty excited for this one. So the next one I want to talk about is The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is coming out January 19th, and it is an adult fantasy with a bit of a vague synopsis, something about like a con man and like some elite houses and masquerade balls and whatever it is. I'm pretty sold, not gonna lie. Adult fantasy is one of those that I don't need to go into with like massive synopses. I feel as though the vibes of this one are going to be immaculate because based on the cover and what I'm reading from the synopsis, it kind of gives me like Night Circus Gilded Wolves opulence, but in like a Loch Lamora setting. And I'm super intrigued, and I feel like it's going to be an aesthetics driven book, and that's what I'm always here for. So I am pretty interested in this one. We have another January 19th release, which is Hall of Smoke by H.M. Long. This is another adult fantasy. This one I believe is a little bit more Norse mythology inspired. Let me read you the little blurb on top of Goodreads because it sounds really interesting. Epic fantasy featuring warrior priestesses and fickle gods at war. Listen, I don't know what more I need. When I hear like priestesses and gods at war, I'm sold personally. Don't know about y'all. I feel as though the vibes of this one are maybe gonna go more like 100,000 Kingdoms with like some Norse mythology, and I'm like so here for it. It sounds pretty interesting. The cover is spectacular, kind of like Mask of Mirrors. I don't really need to know what they're about, so I'm excited for both of those anyways. So for the next one, I'm gonna just read the full title because it's a nonfiction and the subtitle is a bit long. It is called Nobody's Normal: How Culture Created the Stigma of Mental Illness by Roy Richard Grinker. So this is coming out January 26th, and this is a nonfiction about mental health, and I thought based on that like subtitle, it sounded really interesting and really important for today's day and age. So I will definitely be keeping my eye out for that one. The next one I want to talk about is The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. So this one I believe is coming out February 9th, and it seems to be a story of a witch falling in love with Loki, and I'm sold for that premise. I mean, the synopsis on Goodreads is a little longer than that, but listen, a witch falling in love with Loki just sounds like a fantastic premise. Loki is, you know, the trickster god. There's bound to be some really, really interesting tidbits of mythology in there, and I'm so, so, so excited. I love anything to do with mythology and gods and religion, and I'm so here for it. So another one for February 9th is The Guild Ones by Namina Forma. This is a young adult book. I believe it came in one of the subscription boxes, so some people did already get to read it. But first of all, this cover is stunning. Second of all, I really kind of like the premise. So from what I understand, these people at this village have to perform this bloodletting ritual when they hit a certain age. And if your blood runs gold, you are considered impure. It is not the color of regular blood. So of course our main character, when she turns of age, her blood is gold. She is banished, but she gets picked up by this kind of mysterious woman, and she takes her with all these other girls who have also been found to have gold blood, and it turns out that they're these extremely powerful, magical, immortal warriors, and they basically learn how to, you know, hone their power and take revenge on those that have wronged them, and it sounds pretty interesting. I love the idea that it is, I can't remember, I'm so sorry, I can't remember which part of Africa it's inspired from, but it is like an African inspired story, and that's, you know, part of mythology I don't know that much about. This book just sounds like, yes, it may have a somewhat typical plot, but I feel like there's going to be an interesting element in that there's actually like a group of girls that share these powers. It's not just the character going on this journey of self-discovery. It feels like it could be really, really interesting. I'm excited to see the dynamic between this group of girls that were all like banished and have this power, and I'm very curious to see what I feel about this one. The next book I want to talk about is Every Human Intention, Japan in a New Century by Drew Richard. So this is being released February 23rd and is essentially a nonfiction about Japanese culture, but it follows three kind of interesting facets. So you follow the Japanese Nigerian community, you also follow people in the northernmost town of Japan, and you follow, I believe, some like nuclear site officials. And the reason I'm really excited for this one is because Japanese culture in the Western world is either fetishized or ostracized because it is not like our own. So I'm very curious to see it from the perspective of these different communities. And B, I've always been kind of interested in Japan on its own. I feel like they do have an interesting culture, and I don't know if it's because the Western world either like fetishizes it or ostracizes it that makes it so appealing to me, but I really do want to learn more about it, and I feel like this could be a really interesting work of both journalism and like nonfiction, you know, that could really educate me in a very personal way, in a very like human way, and I'm very interested to see what that is all about. So I have another nonfiction here, and I'm just going to read it again because the subtitle's a little long. It's called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions by Michael Moss. So I believe this is going to be released on March 2nd, and this is kind of like the title says, how the food industry basically fucks us all over, and I think that topic is so interesting. I absolutely know and believe within my very heart that the people at the top of the food industry do not have our best intentions at heart. There's a lot of kind of shady things going on, especially in the US, where officials can also be like board members on big food companies, and there's no issue with that. If you know anything about Monsanto and like the monopoly they hold on corn and corn products, the corn syrup conspiracy, the sugar conspiracy, like food is such a fascinating topic when it comes to how it's regulated and how it's sold to us, and I'd love to find out more, so I'm very, very, very curious about this book. The next book comes out on March 30th, and it is Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. So this is a retelling of the Greek myth of Ariadne, and I am sold. If you don't know, Ariadne is the daughter of the king of Crete, and she gets involved with, I'm trying to remember because I haven't read the tale in a long time, but she gets involved with Theseus, who is tasked with killing the Minotaur that lives in the maze under Crete. And I'm very curious because obviously after having loved Circe so much this year and the Song of Achilles, I'm absolutely in love with this whole idea of retelling Greek myths. It's like so up my alley. I love everything about this trend and I'm here for it, so I'm excited to see how good this one stacks up to Madeline Miller's works, because I do love me some Madeline Miller. And the final book I want to talk about comes out on September 7th so far, and it is one of my most anticipated releases of like all time ever, and it is Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff. Hear me out. I don't like vampires. I don't care to read about them. But Jay Kristoff could, like they say, write me his grocery list and I would read it and I'd be okay with it. He also has been doing a lot of previews for this story and it sounds a lot more up my alley. So from what I understand, we're following someone who, first of all, the world seems fascinating because there was a war between humans and vampires and I believe the vampires had won. So everything is kind of serving them. There's not a lot of sunlight these days. Everyone kind of lives by the vampire rules, and you follow a main character who is part of an elite religious guild of vampire hunters. And y'all know me, religion is one of my buzzwords, same with mythology, so like I am so here for it. Like I said, Jay Kristoff has been like previewing the map and the symbols that he's using and it just seems like my aesthetic despite the vampires. I'm so fucking curious. I also love that it is like a high epic fantasy rather than like an urban fantasy, which we see a lot with vampires. So I am so excited for this. I'm going to pre-order it when it becomes available in chapters and I am like here for it. I am so excited for this. So yeah, that was my fairly short list of some anticipated releases for at least, you know, the beginning chunk of 2021. Let me know of any other ones that you're excited for because I'd love to find out about more releases that are coming out. Otherwise, my social media is linked down below. You can always give me a shout there, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye!